say frequently is that what's worse than a book that is bad is a book with promise that it squanders. As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, which should have been a reflection on a very recent war and instead felt like the spiritual successor of the YA dystopian movement, was such a book. It was a book I was rewriting in my head as I read it, and I'm here today to do just that, to rewrite it, but not in my head this time. Specifically, I think this book should have been fantasy, or that it should have leaned into the bits of fantasy that were already there. And I'm not just saying that because I love fantasy and because most of the things I read and talk about happen to be fantasy, but because it seemed like the author was already wanting to write something fantastical and didn't quite follow through on it. Joining me today will be my beloved friend, Julia. Julia has a really good perspective on this because one, she had already read the book when she was in its target audience. She read it as a teenager and reread it just now so that her memory was refreshed to discuss it with me. She had opinions on one particular plot element, on the fantastical element because she loves magical realism, and on how Arabic was incorporated in the book. Now, because Julia and I live in different countries, we are going to be doing this digitally, and the quality isn't going to be particularly good. I am so sorry, but we tried our best, and we will start now. There will be spoilers abounding. Be warned. All right, hello everyone. I am here with my beautiful friend who beautifully heard me complaining about this book I was reading and identified the book by my complaints. It turned out she had read it too. The book is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. I almost said glow. They don't glow, but they do grow, by Zoulfa Katouh. Did I say that right? All right, thanks. Some kind of Arabic consultant you are. Okay, so we are here today to talk about this book because as we were talking about it, we realized that both of us really wanted to like this book, and both of us were really frustrated by the lack of follow through on some very good and very interesting ideas. Also, a lack of follow through on this very beautiful cover.
I wanted to be good so bad.
So today we'll be discussing like how it wasn't good, how it could have been good, and a specific direction that we think it could have gone in that would have been really cool. Julia, would you like to explain what this book is about?
I would. As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow follows this pharmacy student called Salama that is basically thrust into this position of authority as like a de facto doctor and surgeon when the Syrian civil war like bubbles over. This book I think is set in 2011.
That's the impression I got as well.
Yeah. And the central like concept of this book is her trying to decide if she should stay, and because she feels that she has a responsibility towards the people of her city who are getting attacked and who are getting wounded and who are dying in front of her. But also she feels that she has to leave and escape for her sister-in-law. For her sister-in-law, who is also pregnant. So she's basically torn between these two decisions. And along all of this, she is also getting these visions slash hallucinations given to her by this guy who appears to her. His name is Khof, which is just fear in Arabic. And he's basically trying to convince her to leave by showing her these like horrible visions of the bad things that happened and the bad things that could happen.
The other thing that's happening is that Salama is falling in love with this boy whose name is, I forgot.
Kenan.
Whose name is Kenan. The day before the war broke out, they were going to meet for coffee because their moms wanted them to get married. They have this kind of very sweet, I'd say too sweet for what the rest of the book is trying to do, romance. And throughout this book, you get the impression that the author would really rather be writing a fantasy. She talks a lot in the acknowledgments, in the dedication, and throughout the book itself about her love of Studio Ghibli and about the power of imagination to kind of transform the mind. Studio Ghibli is a really interesting thing for her to have brought up because Miyazaki, he actually writes a lot about war. He witnessed World War II. And so there's a lot of war and magic being intertwined in his work in a very seamless way, which is not done here. Here we kind of are told about the power of imagination, but we don't get to witness it. And that's kind of a pattern in this book, is that we are told a lot of things, but we don't get to witness them. Zoulfa, I don't like referring to authors by their first name. It feels disrespectful. Katouh.
Katouh.
Katouh. She is herself Syrian, and is herself a pharmacy student. She's currently, at the time of that this book was written, she was getting her master's in pharmacy. So yay, congrats to her. She is herself Syrian, and when I first read that summary and the author bio, I kind of assumed that this was semi-autobiographical, but she actually is writing not about her own experiences. She grew up in Canada and now lives in Switzerland. I'll find the interview, but from the interviews mentioned, she grew up visiting grandparents in Syria, which we will talk about later. The scope of what we're talking about here is we're analyzing what didn't work and how it could have worked by instead being magical realism or leaning into the magical realism angle a little bit more. So it's good that I called upon my magical realism girly. Julia is a big fan of magical realism, which is a subgenre of literary fiction. It has its roots in South American fiction in the mid 18th, not 18th century, the mid 20th century, 50s, 60s, where it's literary fiction, but the fantastical element or an element of like imagination is used to emphasize the metaphors or the themes. It doesn't necessarily matter whether or not the thing that is happening is real or not real, because that's not the point. The fantastical element is there to emphasize what's already there. This book was kind of trying to do that with the way that Salma sees these hallucinations of fear personified. But it was also kind of trying to do it both ways. He only started to show up after she hit her head, after a bombing. And she says, well, maybe it's my PTSD. That didn't need to happen because she already symbolizes her PTSD on account of being fear personified. So we didn't need to do that.
We didn't.
The other big twist in this book, we find out at about, would you say like 3/4 of the way through?
Yeah, it's almost at the end.
We find out that Layla, the sister-in-law who has been her whole reason for wanting to get out, is
Dead.
she's dead, guys.
Which is a wonderful, wonderful thing to put in your book.
This is a trope that shows up, and it's not a trope exclusive to YA, I don't think, but I have never seen it so consistently as in YA. I don't think it works at all because you are undercutting your own tension. I think these are the main points in like the plot of the book, which is a strong word because the book didn't have a very strong plot. Did you feel there was a climax? I've been thinking about this and I couldn't find one.
The thing is, there's like multiple climaxes. Finding out that Layla is dead and not actually like a ghost or hallucination or whatever should have been a climax, or at least part of the climax. But then there's also the part where like the hospital gets attacked.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. You forgot, but that's
Does that happen before or after we find out that Layla is dead?
wait.
Anyway, keep talking. I'll find it.
The thing is, those are like two separate events. They don't feel like intertwined together as one big climax.
The Layla reveal does happen before the attack at the hospital.
Yeah, the thing that a thing that makes the two quote unquote climaxes feel so separate and not like one cohesive thing is that after the reveal happens, Sadama's just fine. She literally says like, "I think I've processed it."
This book could have either been a realistic novel or a magical realism novel. It straddles both. If we are going for the realism, that Layla is genuinely a product of grief and Salma having hit her head, it makes zero sense that she is mentally unwell enough to hallucinate an entire person. She hugs her. They sleep in the same bed together. She puts her head in her lap. These are very complex hallucinations. Layla not being real is not a conclusion she comes to herself. She's talking to her in a room. Her husband comes into the room and he's like, you're talking to the empty air. And that is when she realizes. Now, I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. I am a girl who reads too many books. However, this isn't just a hallucination. I feel like it's also a delusion, given that she knew that Layla died and then like forgot about it. People, when confronted with a delusion like that, I don't think they're just like, oh, that's right, I did invent my dead sister again. No, they fight it because that's the new reality that your mind is built to protect itself. Layla's presence in the story is meant to show which is how desperate and frightened and traumatized she is, but it does the opposite because we don't feel the weight of it after. But what we were saying about the climaxes, I also came up with a third climax.
On the boat.
Yes, there's not one peak moment of tension, and it's because the stakes kept changing. Neither of us were impressed by the writing. It felt a little juvenile. To some extent, that's all right because we're not the intended audience. We're in our 20s. We're reading this with our grown-up brains. Except Julia did not read it with her grown-up brain because Julia first read it at the age of 16 and 17.
I read it on my Kindle on a road trip, and it pissed me off so bad. It pissed me off so. I was so mad. I was so mad because I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to be good so badly.
I mean, like, it's an important topic. I felt like reading this made it click for me why I can't read most YA anymore. It wasn't just showing, not telling, but it was the only term I can think of it is like telegraphing. Like, it's showing you what it's doing before it does it, and it's telling you exactly what to think and feel. Like, there was a bit that I can no longer find. Wait, I took a picture of it. She spells out her main character struggle to you.
The part where she's like talking about if she should stay or if she should go.
Yes, exactly. And how many pictures of books do I take?
You do work in a library.
I do work in a library. But I don't say the rest of what I'm thinking, that I'm only humoring her, that I'm torn between my duty to my brother and to the hospital, the ropes holding me on each side, both fraying on the edges, and I don't know which will give before the other. The fact that she feels torn, someone who is reading with their whole brain, they're going to be able to pick up on that without her needing to tell us. And again, this is partially because this author is writing for a very young audience, but also a very young audience isn't stupid.
Yeah.
What was that bit with the like, but I'm not okay?
Yeah, it was like, wait, I can picture it in my mind. It's like she's talking, I think, to Layla, and she's like, I'm fine. And like it says like, I'm fine, I whisper, I'm alright. And then, but I'm not fine.
So this is not a girl talking about how like she's not okay after a breakup or what have you.
Yeah.
This is someone in the middle of a war. One point where we could see that the writing was not really carrying its own weight was in the symbol of the lemon. So Julia, what did lemons mean in this book?
Okay, so first of all, I think the book wants the lemons to symbolize hope.
Yes.
There's this quote at the beginning. It says, every lemon will bring forth a child and the lemons will never die out. And also, like at the very end, that's like the last sentence of the book, she says like something along the lines of, as long as lemon trees grow, we will always have hope, or something like that. Like literally
Yes, it says she plants a lemon tree in her new home in, is it Germany or in Switzerland?
Toronto.
She was already in Toronto at that point?
Yeah, because they went to Germany and then they left like Kenan's siblings there. And
you're so right. Everything negative I say about this book, take it with a grain of salt.
Not me, I'm always correct.
That's why I bring you on, because you're always correct. So she plants the lemon tree and then she says, it reminds me that as long as the lemon trees grow, hope will never die. And then there's a little lemon.
Wow. So like explicitly, that's what the lemons want to be.
Yes.
But beyond that sentence and beyond the epigraph, lemons are represented in this book, but it's always surface level.
I would say lemons are present in this book.
Are present. They're mentioned.
Yes, they're there.
It's never to bring in the symbolism. It's stuff like, you know, like she's thinking about the past and she's like, oh, like my mom had a tablecloth patterned with lemon.
The first sentence of the book is 3 shriveled lemons in a plastic bag of pita bread that's more dry than moldy sit next to one another. That's all the supermarket has to offer. So what is, I guess that means that the hope has shriveled up. But we don't dig into that. It's just there's a lemon there.
I did like the thing about using the lemons to fight seasickness.
Using hope to fight.
There's something there.
Like, I didn't put that together. That's clever. I want to go back to the poem, which I'm skimming. Did you read the whole poem?
I also skimmed it.
Wow, we're so good at this. I'm reading this via Google Translate, which honestly, the Google Translate is like, makes more sense than I thought it would.
It's not that bad.
But as someone reading the original, what is the poem about?
It's very obviously patriotic, I'd say, and it's also very obviously about Syria. The beauty of it and the way it's been changed. And then it ends like the second to last line is the lemon tree. In my translation, after the lemon tree line, it says, ride the sun, O Damascus, like a horse, and God is your protector and guardian. It's
very clear that this author loved this poem and wanted to carry in that symbolism, but didn't actually put in the work of making the lemon symbolize hope in her own work. So it seems like the other reason she chose lemons is because in the city that she set this, every every like house has its own lemon tree, which I think is cool. You know, my house here has a lemon tree. The house I grew up in Albania had a lemon tree. I love a lemon tree. So it seemed like this was a kind of way to tie in culture. Now, how did you feel about the way that culture was in general tied in? Should we give your qualifications?
So my qualifications, I am Arab. I say I'm Lebanese, but like I'm kind of half Syrian also, if that adds to my qualifications. I was born in Canada. So as a fellow diaspora kid, I feel like I am qualified to critique the way that Zoulfa wrote. It's weird calling her by her first name. I don't know why I did that.
As a fellow diaspora kid from a different culture, I'm gonna do your thing.
I feel like I can critique the way that she wrote about the culture. Here's the thing. Um, the culture in this book is kind of treated like the lemons in the sense that the presentation of it is very superficial. It's there, but what jumped out to me is that, so first of all, there's a lot of mentions of things that are cultural. So obviously, first of all, this book is set in Syria. There's like Arabic words sprinkled like in the dialogue, in the narration. Two things, for example. One thing is that at one point it mentions like her drinking zhurat type of like tea. I was like, wow, okay, I drink that. And there was like one where it mentions like one of the nurses at the hospital like doing the zaharuta, which is like the you know that.
I don't know that. What is that?
It's like it's like a thing like you do when you're joyful or at weddings. It's
Oh, okay, I get it. I get it.
that.
It's like a way to show happy and like
Yeah,
almost
exactly.
like applause.
Yeah, mostly women do it. Those like for example, those are things that are true and correct.
You felt
And
represented by those like
yeah,
being
yeah.
present in there.
But then where I felt that it was lacking was in the I guess the mindset of the characters that we see and the way they talk and the way they are presented, especially for the older characters. Me and Monty were talking about this before, and it's that like it would, for example, it would make sense if like in a way if like Salama or Kenan or Layla would talk more westernly and like because they're young, they had access to the internet.
They have a young person's natural sense of counterculture.
Exactly. But the thing is everybody kind of speaks like this. So there's the this character in the book, Dr. Ziad, who's like the head doctor of the hospital that Salama works at. And she says like explicitly he's become kind of sort of a father figure to her, right?
Mhm.
And when he talks to her, he talks to her in a very supportive way and
It's
like
very therapy speak.
it's very therapy speak. It's like, oh Salama, like you can't like pour from an empty cup. You know, you have to rest. You can't like you can't do this to yourself. You have to like take time for yourself. You have to, and it's like I'm not denying that he like can care about her,
Yeah.
but the way he says it, it's like Monty said, is very therapy speak, and it's very westernized. And like in my experience, listen, if an older Arab man cares about you and is trying to tell you like you need to take a break, he's not gonna say, "Oh, you need to take a break for your soul, for yourself. You know, like take time for yourself. You have to rest." Especially not in an active war zone. Like that's the thing.
Yes, they have children coming in with shrapnel wounds every day.
Like he wouldn't be saying that. And like if he wanted to tell her to like take a break, he would be like go home, eat something, drink water.
Go sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's something like an ER doctor in the US. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they would not be talking like that. Never mind a man in an active war zone.
Like you know, and even like for example, there's this antagonistic character in the book. Antagonistic. His name is and he's like basically like the boat.
He's a smuggler. Like, he helps get people out of the
Yeah.
country.
And he like asks for money back and like he kind of and like takes advantage of people
He's
in
taking
exchange
advantage of the
get them.
war to get money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And even he has lines where he's like talking to Sadama, who he ostensibly dislikes because she basically threatens his daughter to
You know, and I will say, I think that was one of the only, this is a side note, I think that's one of the only scenes that I actually really liked. When Salama,
yes.
she doesn't have enough money to bribe her way onto a boat, and so she threatens the boatman to let the boatman's daughter bleed out. And she is like to get him to get her onto a boat, and that is the worst thing that she does in the whole book, and she is like racked by guilt. I
Mhm.
loved that.
That was a really good character beat.
Yes.
I want
Back
to
to the
say,
culture thing.
even he like has moments where he's talking to Salama and he's talking to her in like this like encouraging, like you can't give up way.
Do you think that the way that she portrayed culture was intentional to kind of maybe soften or appeal to her Western audience? Or do you think it was incidental because she couldn't quite capture her setting like she wanted to?
I don't think it was on purpose. First, because hearing her and reading her talk about this book, I don't think it's something that I think she thinks that she did it well, if that makes sense.
I think she felt she was doing something very important.
Yeah, exactly. Like caps, like an important book, like that communicates an important idea. Like the concept is important, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't think if like she would consciously like undermine that
Yes.
by her point was like to show that like Syrians are people. She pretty explicitly says this. I think in her little like author's note. Yeah, I don't think it was on purpose because if your goal was to show that like Syrians how they are as are, in like their natural state. I don't know how to explain it. In like their natural state are people just like you and me.
And I won't deny that, especially young people in every country, like read Western books and watch Hollywood movies and listen to our BTS fans. But it's always interesting that there's always like whenever you're humanizing a non-Western group, you humanize them by showing them doing Western things and
Yes.
interacting with Western things.
Yeah.
That's still such like an imperialistic mindset of like, oh, this person is a person because they're just like you. But it's like, even if they weren't just like you, even if they were doing their own version of the things, that
Hmm.
that would have value and identity as well. And
Yeah.
again, like she herself clearly, she's very millennial. She loves her Ghibli and her Taylor Swift and her BTS, who are all thanked by name in the acknowledgments. I have to admire that. And that's okay, but it's more so a portrait of her as it is a humanization of
Exactly.
Syrians.
Exactly. Like it's not a coincidence that Salama is a pharmacy student and loves Ghibli moving movies and is a writer. I would bet real money on the fact that the little story she tells, like,
Oh, yes, I thought that too. Her little Ghibli story. I'll bet that was the author's like little childhood fantasy
yeah,
story.
yeah, because she was like, I watched like this Ghibli movie and then I started writing because it like inspired me so much. Or
The
real
idea was
money.
cute. It was like wasn't it like a forest that was a sea?
Yes.
And honestly, part of me wishes she had written her forest in a sea instead, because clearly she was more excited about it. And I think I say this with a heavy heart, as also a diaspora kid. You can't really write, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be allowed to, but you cannot really write about your country in the same way when you've never lived there. I've lived in not my country for 10 years, and I go back and I forget the words for things, and I like stumble through conversations. And sometimes I think of a cultural norm and I'm like, well, is that my country? Is that my family? Is that just me now? Like you get a little confused, which isn't a bad thing, but it does make it harder to portray that authentically. And honestly, I think this is also just partially an issue in YA as this thing. Like everyone salivates over these own voices books as if you want to be taken seriously as an author, you have to be pulling from your own perspective. Like you aren't allowed to just be imaginative and write Ghibli core things. You have to pimp out your own identity.
As diaspora,
I don't know how to say it either.
I think it's like important to keep in mind as a diaspora kid that like you can't write about everything, and that's not a condemnation, it's not an indictment of anything. It's just like there's stuff you know and there's stuff you don't know, and it's hard because it makes you feel like you're not enough.
You want to prove that you're like a real one.
Yeah, and like Listen, man, I have written my fair share of angsty diaspora, like short stories and little
Yeah.
poems.
I got some poetry that no one will see.
But like at some point, you just kind of have to accept that this is how you are,
Yeah.
and these are the things you know.
It is okay to like write about those things, but do you know what? And I went back through the book too, because she had like a 10-page acknowledgments thing, and I
Mhm.
thought I wonder if she maybe spoke to a family member or a friend or someone who did actually go through some of these things to like get some, and it's possible she did, right? But there was no mention in her very lengthy acknowledgments page of like for lending their experiences to me, for talking to me, like thank this person for helping me understand what it was like to, be there. And no, like she, she's thanking her siblings and her family members and her writer friends of this and that,
And BTS.
and BTS individually by name. But there wasn't, and again, it's possible that she did have like someone to talk to about these things, she just didn't mention them. And honestly, now that I think about it, that might be kind of worse if she like
Yeah.
pulled from someone's experiences and didn't mention them. You
Right.
always need to do some research as a writer, independently of whether, because like she is allowed to write about whatever she wants. She is certainly like quote unquote allowed to write about her own cultural heritage. But even independently of whether or not we think she did a good job portraying that, this book was not ready to be written.
Mm-hmm.
The plot was not done, the characters were not quite done. It was just, it needed to be cooked a little longer. There are books in the genre that have done similar things and done them well. A lot of reviewers were mentioning Salt of the Sea, which is by Rita,
Stephatis.
thank you, which is a book about the Holocaust. No, actually not about the Holocaust, which is a book about World War II.
Yeah.
It's about like teenagers in World War II. I read it when I was in high school. Did you also read it when you were in high school?
Yes.
And it is very well done. And I remember the author mentioning at the end of the book, and I haven't read it in 5 or 6 years at least. But she mentioned that she had gone and interviewed with survivors of this historic shipwreck. She mentioned them by name. That was a book that, even though obviously the author could not have, bro, the Eastern European comes out when I say obviously, and now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it, and it drives me crazy because like I don't even have an accent anymore. I have more of an accent in all my Albanian than I do in my English, but somehow the word obviously, you heard it right then. It straddles the line between two worlds, and I hate it. I hate it. Pick a side. Um, so the author of Salt to the Sea, she like obviously she could evidently she could not have actually witnessed like Central Europe during World War II, but she was able to put herself in it because she spoke to survivors and was able to like display like a real sense of danger. Not to say that like I don't want to hold up one book and be like this one did it better,
But
but and what was the name of the YA magical realism that you brought up?
it was The Astonishing Color of After by Emily something,
Emily Pan.
which is also a book that I read in high school a very long time ago. I don't remember. And I don't remember much from it, but I do remember, I think, it being my very first like introduction to magical realism. It does something very similar. Sim it does something that maybe the author wanted to do in this book, um, which is bring in the
The fantastical?
the fantastical in a way that brings out
Oh, yes, she was able to tie it to a cultural concept
to a
and to cultural
cultural
identity.
concept and also to the like grief.
Because that one, so in that one, you said it was the death of her mother, and she is saying, no, my mother isn't dead, she's turned into a bird, and she sees a bird everywhere.
Yeah,
What do you feel like that book did that this book failed to do that made it work?
I think mostly what it did that worked is that it didn't tie itself down to a camp or didn't try to like to play both camps in terms
Oh,
of
like it didn't
there's
try to be like, is this PTSD or is it spiritual? Given that they did mention it as PTSD, you might come into this and be like, well, obviously it wasn't trying to be fantastical at all. But that's not true because in his last appearance, second
oh
him, fear, cough, cough, cough,
oh
cough. Okay, this guy, he says, I'm known by many names and I lurk in humanity's hearts and I'm known as Angst in German and fear in English and I will always be here as long as humanity is here, which is giving this idea that he's not just her hallucination. He is the world's manifestation of fear. That's a big concept.
And also to add on to the more fantastical element of it, if it wasn't trying to be fantastical, if it was truly trying to be realistic,
Mhm.
at the end, Half is literally because he's basically trying to convince her to leave, right?
Mhm.
And when she leaves, he's like, I'm not gonna be here anymore.
He is like a whole character. They have a dynamic. She bargains with him. She's like, if I do this thing, you're only going to be torturing me with hallucinations for 1 hour tonight, not the whole night. And he's like, all right. That's not how PTSD works.
It's not good enough of a metaphor or symbol for it to work.
We keep harping on this magical realism element, even though this book is not magical realism. But the reason is that, repeatedly, Hanan and Salama, they have conversations about their love of Ghibli and about the power of the fantastical and about the imagination. Clearly, one of the themes of this book wanted to be the power of the fantastical and of imagination to help you have hope, lemons, and overcome hardship war. But the book wasn't actually about that. They just talked about it. We just mentioned the idea, and I don't doubt that this is an idea that the author herself feels very strongly about. Hence why Ghibli is such a foundational influence on her life methodology. So we want to rewrite a version of this book where the magical realism is actually present. I always do this, like I do all this setup and then the actual purported point of the thing is squished in at the end. Julia had a very good idea of how in a magical realism version of this story, Ralph could.
I think one of the a thing that is really undermining him as I'm not gonna say a character because I don't want him to be a character. That's the point. But like him as like a presence is the fact that he is a character. Is the fact that he has like a personality and a voice and he can talk to Salama and like Monty said they can like communicate. Salama can like bargain with him and like at some point, dude, at some point at the end he's like, I consider you a friend.
Me when I successfully riz up the fears in my head.
He's too much of a character for what he is
You know,
representing.
he has
Because
a
also,
personality. He
yeah,
smokes a cigarette.
at the end, he's like, I am infinite. I am all these things. I am in every culture. I am in and then he's just like just a guy.
It's undermining his purpose in the narrative.
Yes, but the image of because we didn't mention this, but Hof is his representation is that of like a young man in a soldier's uniform with like bloodstains on it.
That's strong symbolism.
The image of like a young soldier, a young soldier like man, um, could be a reoccurring vision. It is a very strong image. It's a very strong symbol. He doesn't have to be a character. He doesn't have to talk. He doesn't have to have like a set face. Emma's brother and father um, were slash are like soldiers.
I think they were just at a protest and they were captured. Maybe they should be soldiers. Maybe we should make them soldiers.
If they're not, maybe we should make them. Then they were like taken away by the dictatorship. Already we have like two things that this soldier man could be. And then there's also all of the like young soldiers that Salama treats at the hospital.
Oh, I didn't think of that. That's true. So like of course he wouldn't have a face because like the image of a dying young man dying for his country has morphed into this like faceless. She sees him them again and again and again and again and
Yeah.
again.
Already that's a thing that would make this book better.
When I started this book, I thought Ralph was going to be a romantic interest because they had chemistry.
Yeah.
Because he was a character. He wasn't a symbol. He was a person. And at the end, he disappears, and she tells her husband, she's like, he's gone now, and he's like, yeah, I never liked him. I was jealous of him. Yeah. Anyway, the other thing I think shouldn't be a thing is the Layla is dead plot twist. I don't think it adds anything to the narrative. Now, what I do think should happen is that Layla should die. I think no, because listen, the book doesn't have a climax. And the book gets rid of its own main conflict because she's torn. Am I going to stay here and save my patients, or am I going to leave and take care of myself and my sister? As soon as she meets Kenan and his siblings. She's like, oh, actually, I have to leave with them, and we all have to get out, and this is important. Like, I am in power of survival. Gotta say, I met a cute boy is a very bad reason to like suddenly have faith in your life. And I'm not saying that like, obviously young people have always coped through like they've always coped there's always been wartime romances. I think using the romantic interest as a way to nope out of the main conflict was very, very much a waste. I think instead Layla should be for real actually alive, and that Saloma's love for her and her unborn niece or nephew should be the thing that motivates her to she's like, okay, like I would really want to stay, but I have to do this. And then if the climax is Layla's death and she instead has to pick herself up and all of a sudden leave for herself instead of just for
Mm-hmm.
Layla, I
Yeah.
think that would be a much more meaningful way to solve that
Yeah.
main
I
tension.
love
And it would also give the book a climax. We can even leave Kanan here if that's what we really want to do.
that.
And in
He
fact, we
can
need Kanan.
stay.
He
He
can
can
stay as a
stay.
treat. So, and in fact, we need Kanan here for my biggest proposed rewrite, which is that. So I was thinking about how this book wants to be about the power of imagination, right? But the only actual fantastical element in the book is not hopeful or uplifting or whatever. It is terrifying because the only fantastical element of the book is that idiot with the cigarette, the calf. And so instead, now if we have initially we Julia has already turned Calf from a guy with a cigarette into a pattern of horrifying hallucinations. I propose that we do the flip side, and in addition, we make it so that Salma has like a dissociation, fantastical dream world that she can escape into. It can be full of lemons. Maybe she's in her nightmare, and then she knows like, okay, I have to find some lemons because lemons mean hope. And whenever she finds a lemon tree, it turns into a fantastical dream world instead of a torturous, horrifying one. And we can put Kanan there. He can be her little dream boyfriend, and neither of them know that the other is a real person. Both of them think that the other is a figment of their imagination, and they can explore this fantastical land together while at the same time constantly being jerked back to the horrifying real world, and then slowly discover that they need to take, and that dream world can be Syria as they want it to be, as they remember it to
Yeah.
be, the Platonic ideal Syria. They can drag that with them and all its lemon trees into the real world and realize that they need to have hope in the real world and not just in their dream.
I do really like that idea, and I think that like because that's the thing, right? If your story is gonna have like one of the points be the power of imagination, because by the way, I didn't mention this. Salama's a writer. Kanana's like a
He wants to be an animator, and he
he
turns
wants to be
himself
an
into he becomes like a journalist or a documentarian. He records the
yeah.
protests and puts them online.
Both of them are creatives, is what I want to say. In a story where that is a thread, you want there to be an aspect of imagination,
Yeah,
creativity, and the fantastical that
yeah.
is good and
And
not just
especially when,
bad.
yes, exactly. It's like you have a fantastical element in your story about the power of imagination, and you waste that fantastical element on emphasizing fear. You're going counter to the message you're trying to do. You had a good idea when we were talking about this last night in spitballing, which is that like if Layla or no, sorry, I swear I can tell them apart. If Salma doesn't realize that Kanan is a real person, she can, but they were going to meet for coffee. So maybe she's thinking that, like, oh, this is the imagined, I've made up a version of that boy that I was going to marry, like, to help me cope with it. But he's a
Yeah.
real person. And then they can actually meet later and actually get to know each other. And that's hope personified.
I also think in terms of like the nightmare visions, um, in the book they're very clearly defined. They're very clearly like scenarios.
Oh, like it's very clear that they're unreal.
Yeah, like basically, like Hope just like comes up to her and is like, "Hey, watch this," and then he, yeah, snaps his fingers, and then she like sees like her mother like dying, or her brother telling her, "You promised like that you would get my wife out," but it's always like very clear to define. It's not like hazy at the edges. Get rid of that here and make the nightmare visions much more like fantastical, much more like hazy.
They can bleed into her real life. She can be having a shift at the hospital, and all of a sudden, I don't know, something horrible happens to the patient in front of her, and all of a sudden she can't realize what's real and what's not real. Did she save that patient or didn't they? Did they turn into a big monster? Did they disappear into ash? What happened? She can't tell, but she has to keep going anyway.
That's like a point also about the like whole realism thing. Um, of like what the book was trying to be, if it was trying to be realism or fantasy
Mhm.
or whatever. Um, it's that the hallucinations and Hof in general never leaks into her real life. He always gives her like these visions at night when she's with nobody else.
It doesn't disturb her real life. This is a physical
Exactly.
manifestation for PTSD, but she's functioning just fine during the daytime.
The most impact it will have on her is like, you know, at some point, like she basically tells Hof, she's like, show me like the worst case scenario or whatever, and then the next day she's like sleep deprived, and it's like, okay.
You know, people get sleep deprived for non-fantastical reasons. And I think it's important that, like, whenever I imagine doing a rewrite, I never want to, like, trash on the author's version of the story. I want to find the gap between what you wanted to do and what actually make it onto the page, right? So she wanted to tell a story about war. She wanted to tell a story about hope. She wanted to humanize Syrians, and she wanted to tell a story about the power of imagination. Those are the things that I think we're trying to emphasize. The other reason that I thought it would be interesting to put her and Kanan in a dream world was because one of the things that she mentioned was that she wanted this to be like a halal love story, where, like, you know, they don't touch until they're married, this and that. If we put them in a dream world, they don't have to touch each other, they don't have to interact, but they can still get to know each other.
Yeah.
Magic chaperone. And I do think that the thing that would bring this together and make it more magical realism is like the lemons. The lemons should be
Yes.
more present.
The lemons should be. They're the title. It's the title of the book, guys. I liked what you were saying about like the lemons being like symbolizing hope and therefore being kind of an escape from the nightmare. And I think it makes sense as and like emphasizing that symbol. You know, driving it home without saying it explicitly.
A lot of people, when they first start to write, they don't know how to do symbolism. They don't know how to make the lemon a metaphor and not just the lemon. It's difficult. It's a skill. You were saying yesterday that you thought that she should see lemon saplings everywhere.
Yeah.
Did you mean that as a literal or like as a hallucination or both?
Oh, because I had a different idea. Before we were talking about the hallucination thing, I know I was thinking like an actual real lemon sapling
Yeah.
somewhere like outside next to her house or like in a hidden spot she finds that is like shielded from the elements.
Oh,
I was thinking of like an actual real one and I didn't know like I hadn't developed it yet, but I was like thinking because it's like a symbol of hope, what if she like latches onto that
yeah. Like she
and
found
then
one untouched symbol of hope
yeah,
amidst all the carnage.
and then like what if it does like at some point like also in like in some climax or
Yes.
what if it does like end up getting destroyed but she still is able to hold on to that hope because
Yes.
of character development.
It would be a similar thing to like if we killed Layla at the climax of like we're taking away all of her reasons for hope and making her hold on to the hope anyway. I think we can definitely include both of these. You and I have very high standards for books because we're a little pretentious. Just a little, just a little. We've never been mean in our lives. So their standards sometimes include frustration with some of the common tropes of YA. The book doesn't have to stop being YA. It can still have the romance and the simple writing and the heavy-handed symbolism or whatever. There's little tweaks. All right, we have 5 minutes left. Do you have anything else that you would like to say about lemons, about magical realism, about fictional Arabs? She's consulting her notes. I'm ready.
I I think that's like what I had written down, but I think the the like point of all of this is that
Mhm.
this could have been a really good book and it could have been the important story that she wanted to write.
Yes.
Even as it is now, it's definitely done good. Like I read through the Goodreads reviews.
A lot of people did find it to be an important, powerful book. And there were important, powerful bits. We said the bit where she threatens the daughter. I personally, like, the only bit that really made me feel emotion was when there's a little boy that dies of internal bleeding and she can't do anything about it. And he says to her before he dies, like, when I die, I'm gonna tell God everything that I saw.
That got me. And it's also a real story.
My God, that poor child.
Yeah.
But she mentioned that that was a real story that happened. So, like, there were individual bits in there that were very good, and clearly it has its audience.
I think it did accomplish what it was setting out to do in a way because a lot of people like you see like a lot of people saying I had no idea this happened until I read this book. Like I didn't know until I read this book or like the extent to which it went. So I don't think the book they didn't do anything.
It
They
could
could have
have
done
done
more.
what it already did and more.
Yeah.
The author's second book is a book about a Syrian American girl, like making her way through her adolescence. I haven't read the book, but I would be willing to bet that that one is a little like better handled, not just because it's a little closer to the author's heart, but because it didn't feel important and weighty. It probably didn't feel intimidating to
Yeah.
write. There's probably some things she could just write without feeling like I need to do this important thing for my people and for my country and for myself. And she was able to just play around a little, vibe, have fun, write with your heart, kids. When someone is writing with fear in their hearts, you can tell. Any last words? Do you want to do fireworks?
Wait, wait.
It's not
Oh, there we go.
working.
Wait. No, it's working.
It's working.
It's working. Wait.
Yippee! Thank you for joining me here at Girl Says
No
Stuff.
problem.
Uh, thank you for being a fellow girl who is saying stuff.
I love saying stuff and I love being a girl.
I also love saying stuff and being a girl. Apologies to everyone who has to look at my terrible lighting. The sun has gone down. Is your sun also down and you have a light?
No, my son is like, it's mostly down. It's just I have the light open.
Yeah, see, you're right. No, it's terrible. All right, well, thank you to all, perhaps four of the people who will wind up joining us. And
Okay.